Well, Karabo, I mean, they are the two main candidates as they stand. We're reading that 7 provinces have nominated. Ramaphosa has 4. NDZ has 3, but how are you seeing things?
And as you can see, the outstanding there, we look over at Limpopo, which is currently holding its PGC, and of course KZN too, with a lot more issues to iron out. KZN, as you know, is facing a real factional battle between the junior supporters and the new provincial executive council supporters there. Limpopo remains one of the swing states. No one is quite sure how it might go. Earlier murmurs were that Dlamini-Zuma might most likely take that, as we saw her taking Mpumalanga on Friday, which was by a very slim margin, but that's how things stack up right now.
But that Mpumalanga vote, perhaps you can just fill me in there. I mean, does anyone really have it? Because they created this third unity vote there. So I mean, Mpumalanga is a bit tricky.
Well, the one thing that I give Mpumalanga, led by David Mabuza, is consistency. You know, from the beginning of the race, they said we want unity within the ANC. And when I was there on Friday, I mean, that was the surprise story of the day. How many times the song unity came up? How many times the word unity came up? And it seemed like this was an intended thing, because I don't know if the story has been really relayed. You know, there was no candidate called Unity. All those members had to, instead of absconding from voting, wrote down the word unity, as in putting him in as a contender. And I think that, for me, as we round up all the provinces and get to the very end, I think the Mpumalanga decision actually still puts a lot of dynamism on the floor of the conference. I expect that unity candidate, with all the votes that it has amassed, these can be easily votes that can be used for a swing or a third candidate. And Zweli Mkhize still stands in the middle of 2 forces that are pulling to different directions, in NDZ camp and the CR17
But then
camp.
Why not name him as unity? Why call it unity and not call it Zweli Mkhize?
I think it's also strategic. You don't necessarily want to put your weight behind a candidate that hasn't really amassed enough support. And as we have been seeing, it hasn't really amassed enough support. But what Mpumalanga is hoping to do by having a unity candidate is by saying that it's more important that ANC members do not leave at the end of the conference, that people are so bitter and so broken that they can't stay within the ANC. So they are very much working against splinter groups, and that's why they're playing this unity candidate. And even if it be Mkhize, that would still work out well for the Mpumalanga province, who also nominated their chair as deputy president. But on whose ticket? That's the question that remains, because, you know, we all thought that David Mabuza would be a deputy president to Dlamini-Zuma if he gets the province to endorse her, and that's not really what happened on Friday.
Do you know what? Let's actually find out a bit more about what happened on Friday. I understand that you did catch up with David Mabuza. I mean, these are some of the things that he had to say.
What do you want to know?
Who is Unity?
Unity is the bedrock on which the ANC was formed. If we're saying we must put the unity of the organization first, that means a leadership of the ANC that we're going to elect will be achieved through consensus, right? We're not going to contest one another. We're saying let's unite, let's put the leaders together, all of us, and say we accept this one must lead, this one must lead, this one must lead, and not contest. Because the consequences of a contestation are dire.
You know, Michael was here earlier. The markets are very much keeping a close eye on what's happening. We see the rand is a bit stronger because they are pricing in a Ramaphosa win. But he says that, you know, even after this provincial nomination stage is completed, at the actual conference, at the national voting stage, we could see a completely different outcome.
The dynamism that I'm speaking about on the floor, I suspect that there will be more wheeling and dealing and backroom, you know, chatting, and I suspect that Zweli Mkhize might even emerge stronger from the conference itself and not leading up to the conference. Like I said, the ANC stands at an interesting position. I don't see how the Cyril Ramaphosa camp comes back if they lose during national election, and I don't see how the other camp comes back as well. So I think for me, the losses, the margins for loss for the ANC is not really great here. They don't want to lose any of these camps, and I think the unity play, which David Mabuza was speaking about, could really work out a better option for the ANC rather than having a clear winner which will divide the movement.
Who is unity? The bedrock of the ANC, he says. But Karabo, let's move on to what is happening at the ANC NEC branch or NEC level. We know that they are due to have an economic transformation, a subcommittee to release some of the policy proposals that will be debated on at the conference. Policy proposals?
Well, the NEC is meeting, as you rightfully said, meeting in St. George's Hotel. Do we know why they're always meeting at St. George's Hotel? But anyway, another one of those meetings, and the 80-strong NEC will decide things that are outstanding. Among those things that are outstanding are court cases that are really affecting how provinces vote come election. As we know, there are outstanding court cases with KwaZulu-Natal, with the Northern Cape, even with the Free State that has already nominated Dlamini-Zuma. So there's outstanding things that could affect either of these candidates. I personally, I don't have the same confidence as some of our markets commentators who come here and price in a Ramaphosa victory. I'm actually pricing in a very big surprise. I personally don't think that Cyril might end up as president. I don't. If you had to ask me today, of course, this is a fluid situation. It's changing continuously as we lead up there. But if you ask me today, I think the ANC might actually settle with a compromise candidate. I think it makes better sense to settle for a compromise candidate rather than tear yourself apart trying to have, the throne of the ANC.
Compromise candidate. Okay, who is a compromise candidate? As you guys asked Mabuza, what is unity? Who is a compromise candidate?
Well, I don't know if these compromise candidates get any bigger than Zweli Mkhize. But also, to go back on the meeting today, the NEC is meeting to iron out policy issues to go with the unsettled court cases. Policy issues really affect the way the ANC will come out in December and how they will look at things like the Reserve Bank, for instance. I mean, the talk of radical economic transformation, what it actually means in actual terms is, well, according to the comrades that have been advocating for it, they really want a more inclusive and a much more bigger a position to be played by government within people's lives, really. And you could argue that the Ramaphosa stance is more like let the economy take care of itself, create the environment that will build it. So there will be a battle for ideas, and that battle, as you know, as we saw earlier in the year when the ANC had a policy conference, this elective conference will officially put these as ANC policy come December. So after December, we should know how the African National Congress looks at issues of the banks, issues of the Reserve Bank, and really how far radical economic transformation will seep into our lives.
And Mr. PC, if we want more PC commentary, where do we tune in? What time, what day?
Well, of course, we will be continuing to roll on Political Capital. Tomorrow we have another episode at 6:30, and we really look into the if you will, we are heading to the peak now. You know, this is a climax, and I think we have much more exciting content as we go on, and even some left field, unexpected content. So you wanna look out for it. I'll also be sitting down with Mangosuthu Buthelezi, of all people, as he looks back at his retirement years.